1991. This is also being celebrated all across the world, I presume, as Earth Day. It is an attempt on the part of the people living in this year of 1991 to be looking forward to taking care of the Earth for future generations. This is another in a series of interviews with World War II veterans that had various experiences in World War II. My name is Clare Chamberlain. I live in Crawfordsville, Indiana, member of the American Legion and the VFW, and I've been working with the folks of the Montgomery County Historical Society. These interviews are property of the Montgomery County Historical Society, and when the interviews are complete, there's a possibility they might be copyrighted. Other gentlemen that are helping with the interviews are our cameraman, Ed Miller, associated with the local VFW and American Legion. Another gentleman very instrumental in making these tapes for future generations is Bob Wernley, a semi-retired attorney here in Crawfordsville. Another gentleman who is working closely with us here at the Lane Place is Mike Hall, the Executive Director. At this time, I'd like to welcome our person that we're interviewing today from World War II. Welcome to the
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
interview, Jack. Would you give your full name, Jack?
Robert Jack Hubbard.
Robert Jack Hubbard. Were you born in Montgomery County?
I was born in Putnam County.
I see. Whereabouts in Putnam County?
I was born on my grandfather Manham's farm, about 4 miles outside of Cloverdale, Indiana.
Who were your parents?
Omer Hubbard and Lucille Hubbard.
What year, if you don't mind telling us, were you born?
I was born December the 29th, 1923.
I see. Now, you and I are about the same age. I believe I got you by about 6 months, Jack.
Time rolls around pretty fast.
Did you have brother, or do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother. He is deceased. He was William Hubbard. And I have one sister living. She's Helen Hubbard.
I see.
Or Helen Cross now, her married name.
I see. Where does she live?
She lives in Willowbrook, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago.
I see. We'll come back to your family a little later on in the interview, Jack. Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to all my schooling was in Crawfordsville. I went to grade school at Mills Grade School, and then I went to Crawfordsville High School.
I see. What year did you graduate from there?
I missed a half a year of school because I had double pneumonia, and then my brother was quarantined with scarlet fever, and so I became a half grade student. They don't have those anymore, so I got out in January of 1943.
I see.
And so then I went into the service in February of 43, so I didn't actually graduate with my class, although I graduated, but I was in the service when my class graduated.
Were you drafted?
I volunteered.
You volunteered.
Yes.
And what branch of the service did you go into?
Air Force.
Went into the Air Force.
Yes.
Did you go to Indianapolis to enlist in the Air Force?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. I think it was, yes.
I see. And where did you report for your first duty then, Jack?
Indianapolis.
I see. And where did you go from there then?
I went to basic training, and that was in St. Petersburg, Florida.
What did you do there?
That was just basic training, and that's where they try to get you in shape.
Calisthenics and
Right.
Obstacle courses
Right.
and things like that.
Right.
How many weeks did that last?
I think it was about 6 weeks.
And then what did you do?
Then I went to radio school in Scott Field, which is around Bellevue, Illinois, right outside of St. Louis, Missouri.
What did you do at the radio school?
Well, I done all the radio, learned how to build a radio, how to send message, took code, and can't remember how long that school lasted, but that school went on 24 hours a day. And I remember that my classes, especially in code, was started at around midnight. So never got much sleep.
No, I should say now. And then you graduated from that radio school.
Yes.
And then where'd you go?
Then I went to Laurie Field outside of Denver, Colorado. And there I took it wasn't gunnery school. I was there at Laurie for. I guess it was just general flight training, and that's where I learned to do the armament work. Primarily that was just checking all the machine guns, and then I was the one that, if we went on a mission, I was the one that went out and unarmed the bomb before we dropped them.
How did you, who assigned you, or did you volunteer to be on a bomber?
Yes, I did. Well, I volunteered for the Air Force, and you see, this goes by. I'll have to go back. I wanted to become a pilot, and so several of us fellows who were in high school at the time, we went up to Lafayette and took the Air Force examination, and there was about 11 or 12 of us went up there, and I remember 4 of us passed the mantle. Phil Hall was one, I remember, and he went on to become an officer in the Air Force. But then we had to go back the next week and take our physical. Well, when we went back to take the physical, I flunked my eye exam, and so I didn't get to go into that program. But my name was in there that I had done this, so that's what put me in the Air Force.
I see. Did you fly in Denver, at Lowry? Did you fly there?
No, we didn't do any flying.
No flying, but you did armament type work.
Yes.
With machine guns and things like that.
Yes, it was a general Air Force training there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then where did you go?
Then I went to Las Vegas, Nevada for gunnery school. That was the gunnery school. You start out with like skeet shooting, reflexes, and so forth like that, because that's very good training for if you're manning a machine gun and following an enemy plunking. It's very good training. So we done a lot of skeet shooting. Then we qualified on the 45 and Thompson submachine gun. But primarily, our training there was skeet shooting.
I see.
Because that, as I said, it's excellent training for when you're manning a machine gun in an aircraft.
Okay. How long were you there?
I don't remember exactly, but I would say 6 to 8 weeks.
And then where'd you go?
Then I went to California, to Hamilton Field, and that's where where the crews were made up, and that's where we started our flying training. That was right outside of San Francisco.
And what type of an aircraft was that?
That was when we got on our B-24s. That's when I knew I was going to be on a bomber, and the type of bomber it was going to be. And that's when our crew was made up. That's when we met the pilot, the co-pilot, the tail gunners, the radio man, and the navigator, and so forth.
How many were on the plane?
I think there was 10.
10 of you.
Well, let me count them out to be sure. There was the pilot, the co-pilot, the bombardier, the navigator, the radio man, the engineer, 2 waist gunners, tail gunner, and myself.
And you were the
I was the armament man and the ball turret gunner.
ball turret gunner. Where's that located?
Right underneath the belly of the plane. I was too big for a since I was the armament man, that's what I trained for in Laurie Field. Then the armament man became the ball turret gunner, but I was much too big to actually be in the ball turret, although that's where I ended up.
Yeah. What type of a gun what type of armament did you have there to shoot with?
The ball turret carried 250 caliber machine guns.
I see. How did you get down into that ball turret?
You crawl down in it, and now, like I said, I crawled down in and hunched over, and then one of the waist gunners would go over and put his foot on my shoulder and push me and lock the door.
You were locked in.
Yeah. Well, I could release from the inside.
Could you see pretty good what was going on from there, or maybe
Well,
too good?
No, actually, down where I was, you couldn't really see hardly the rest of the plane because they would have a cutoff there, so you wouldn't so the turret couldn't go up too high and maybe shoot down your own aircraft. So really, when you were down there, you had great view of the ground and the exterior, but you couldn't see the rest of the plane. No.
I see. Did you have the same pilot all the time?
Yes.
What was his name?
Wilhelm.
Was he?
No, pardon me. Wilhelm was the bombardier. Wilkin. I think the pilot's name was Wilkin. He was an older man. I think he worked for AT&T in California. He was from California, and he was probably about 10 years older than, well, except for the engineer. He was about 10 years older than the other members of the crew. He was a very fine pilot.
Was he major?
No, at that time, I'm sure that when we formed the crew, I'm sure that he was probably just a lieutenant, although I know that he did make captain before we got shot down. But I'm sure, because I'm sure that they didn't have any higher rank when you form your crew than a lieutenant. I'm sure he was a lieutenant at that time.
I've heard that actually any one of the 10, you said there were 10 on the plane, could, in an emergency, fly that plane. Is that true?
No, I don't think that's true. The engineer could fly it. That's the one I met. I told you in Las Vegas. Bruno Chimay. Now the pilot could fly the plane. The co-pilot naturally in emergency. But the only one of the enlisted crew on the aircraft who could fly that plane in emergency was the engineer. Mm-hmm. And they gave him flying lessons, and he could have landed the plane if it had been necessary. Of course, the bombardier and the navigator have both had some flying lessons and could have landed the plane in emergency. Mm-hmm. But the only enlisted crew member who had pilot training was the engineer.
Okay. Jack, now, can you give us the other armament? What the plane carried as far as a bomb load, the other guns that were on it besides the one that you manned?
Well, let's see. They had one 50 caliber in the nose that the bombardier would use. They had a top turret, and that was 250 calibers, and the radio man manned it. They had two waist gunners, each one had a 150 caliber, and then they had the tail gunner, and he had twin 50 caliber machine guns. And then, of course, that was all the armament as far as the defensive armament, and of course our offensive was the bombs we carried.
Do you know approximately what the bomb load was?
I can't recall. Well, of course, naturally, at one time I knew because I'm the one that took care of it, but it's been too long now. I can't recall. I wouldn't. I'd just be
several tons.
Just be guessing, yes. Yeah. Well, not several tons. No, I doubt if. Normally, they carried, say, around 10 500-pound bombs. Well, that would be what, 1 ton, or approximately, wouldn't it? No.
2.5 tons.
2.5 tons.
Okay, very good, Jack. Now, that was in California?
Yes.
And then where did you go from there?
Well, then we went overseas from there. After we took quite a bit of flight training there, at Hamilton Field. Then we went overseas, and to go overseas, we flew to Memphis, Tennessee. From Memphis, Tennessee, we went to Manchester, New Hampshire. From Manchester, New Hampshire, we went to Gander, Newfoundland. From Gander, Newfoundland, we made the longest trip of all. We made a flight from there to the Azore Islands. And from the Azore Islands, we went to Marrakech, North Africa. From Marrakech, North Africa, we went to Italy. And that's the way we got overseas. And it was a new bomber. We got a brand new plane, and we flew it from California to Italy.
What was its name?
I don't think my pilot gave it a name.
He never named it.
No, I don't think so.
Were there other B-24s in the group going there?
Well, I think when we left Gander, no, we left California by ourselves. This was a solo flight all the way to Gander. When we left Gander, I think there was 3 planes that went, 2 other planes went the same time we went to the Azore Islands. But basically, it was a solo flight.
I see. Was it cold in there?
Gander?
No, in the plane. What altitude did you fly?
Going over, I don't know. We wouldn't have been at probably, depending on the weather, I would say. The pilot would have flown at where the weather was best. I really don't know at what altitude we flew at going over. The altitude, I would say, would have changed depending on the weather. I know. Because I'm sure that I know that we had to skirt one bad weather squall, and so that just depends on the weather.
What I wondered was, you usually saw you fellows dressed in some pretty heavy clothing. I wondered if it was cold in there.
Got awfully cold on some of the missions, and yeah, it's very cold. In fact, I got my feet frostbitten one time.
Okay, and you skipped across there, and you ended up in Italy.
Yes.
From there, you're going to make your first mission then.
That's right.
From Italy.
Right.
Okay, when did you get to Italy?
Well, let's see.
Sometime in '44.
It would have been sometime in. See, I went into service in February of '43. No, I would say I would probably got over there very late in '43. I can't remember exactly what time we got there.
Whereabouts in Italy was this?
Foggia, Italy.
Where's that?
That's about the center, on the center of Italy, north and south, but we was pretty close to the east coast, not too far from the Adriatic Sea.
I see. That was a big base.
It was a very big base.
Other bombers there, of course.
All B-24s.
All B-24s.
Yes.
You know how many were there?
No, but that was our largest base in Italy. So there was quite a few.
Mm-hmm. On the way getting there, did you see any enemy?
No.
Did you have any alerts?
No.
On the radio? Did you have to travel your plane with silence? Was there any? Was the pilot?
Oh yes. As far as I know, there wasn't any radio.
There's no radio.
I don't think there's any radio transmission.
I see. Okay, we're up to the time now of your first mission.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, I don't recall where we went on my first mission. We probably we flew quite a bit of missions against southern Germany. So I would think that probably the first missions were against Germany, southern Germany.
So, would that have been Munich?
Munich, yes, quite a few.
Did you ever bomb the railroad yards at Munich?
Probably. I don't recall. I can't recall now our exact targets in Munich, but probably. Yeah.
What did you meet up with any enemy fighters or anti-aircraft on your first mission?
Any aircraft ever mission.
Anti-aircraft every mission. What happens? What goes on in the plane when?
Scares the hell out of everybody. Because you see, you're flying, especially if you're on your bomb run, you know, you have to make that bomb run and you can't take evasive action. Now, flak looks like great big puffs of black smoke all around you, you know, and so it's very scary.
Did you see fighter planes too?
You know, I flew, I was shot down on my 19th mission. I think we only encountered German fighters out of those 19 missions, maybe 3 missions is all we encountered German fighters. Oh no, 3 times I think we encountered them.
Did you, did the flak, did you get hit at all on the first mission?
Wasn't hit on any of the missions until the final one.
Until the final. Did you, from your observation point, see other B-24s get hit?
Oh yeah.
By an aircraft?
By an aircraft, yes. Yeah.
And did they parachute out, most of them, or did they crash land, or what did they do, or both?
Well, you know, it's you know, air war is a big mixture of things. You know, some planes explode, and they disappear. Sometimes they're hit and they go down in a spiral, and sometimes a few of the airmen are able to get out. And sometimes they aren't.
In your training, did you practice bailing out?
Oh no.
But you had parachute.
I had, now, most of them were able to have back chutes, but I being the Volter gunner, I had a chest suit. That's one that clamped on to your chest. That was a smaller parachute, and that's the one I had. Of course, I couldn't take that in the Volter with me. That was, you know, I had to get out of the Volter before I could put my parachute on, because there wasn't any room for it.
And you bombed southern Germany, Munich. I heard you mention France.
Southern France.
And that was on the invasion.
That was when Patch's, right before Patch's 7th Army was going into southern France.
I see. Anything else leading up to your 19th mission, spectacular? That
well, I think probably maybe the scariest mission was we had a mission to the Polesti oil fields in Romania, and we lost one engine before we got there, and we had to turn around and come back. And that was a long, lonely flight all by yourself. But you always wonder when the German fighter, because that's when the German fighters hit you, when you're crippled. And you always, everybody was really uptight until we got back to Italy on that. I think that was maybe the longest flight we was ever, because we were flying very slow on 3 engines, and we was all by ourselves.
Did this engine that you lost get hit?
No, it's just mechanical failure.
Mechanical failure.
Yes.
I see. Well, we're up to the 19th now.
Yes.
Evidently, that's your last one too.
That was my last mission. Yes.
All right. Well, tell us.
All right.
In detail. Just start.
All right.
Give us the detail. What.
All right.
Your briefing and what your target was, and just take us right.
Yes.
Right through that.
Yes. The briefing. It was. See, the Germans had developed this new aircraft called a jet aircraft, and their factory was south of Munich, Germany. Our mission was to hit this jet aircraft factory, make a sharp turn, miss all the flak over Munich. It's supposed to be a milk run. So normally, your missions, when we went over Germany, normally we were flying between 20 and 24,000 feet. But this mission, since we really wanted to hit this bad, because we'd had reports that, you know, we didn't have anything that could touch this aircraft. And so if they got him in vast numbers, jet air, we were dead ducks as far as the air war was concerned, because Germany would control the skies, because we had nothing to compete with. So they really wanted to hit it. So it was a maximum effort. Every 24 bomber in Italy that was able to fly went on this mission. I think there was, I heard later there was over 500 aircraft.
Is that right?
It was a tremendous, big mission. But we were supposed to go in a low altitude at 10,000 feet, because they said there wouldn't be any. Because the Germans were kind of camouflaging, and they didn't have aircraft batteries around this factory, because they didn't think the Allies knew about it. And so we were supposed to make a sharp right turn and miss the flag, and it was supposed to be basically a milk run. But what happened, I do not know. But for some reason, the lead group, after we dropped our bombs, took us sailing right over Munich. And I guess we lost a tremendous amount of aircraft, I heard later that day, because we was at very low altitude, and even though you're throwing out chaff and stuff to try to disrupt the...
What do you mean?
Well, that's tin foil. We'd throw out that chaff to disrupt the radar and the sighting of the anti-aircraft guns. In other words, if the shaft went out, got 500 or 1,000 feet below the craft, then it would hopefully deflect the radar and the sighting of the guns, and then the Germans would have the wrong altitude when they were firing at you, and it worked to a certain extent. Well, that comes later, but I remember when I was a prisoner and we were marching through Germany. I saw that damn tinfoil at the tops of every tree in Germany, so you can imagine how many tons of that stuff had been thrown out by our plane. But anyway, so we went over Munich, and of course the Germans had, I don't know, they had I'm sure over 2,088 anti-aircraft batteries around Munich, Germany. And let's see, we lost 2 engines from anti-aircraft. We lost our hydraulic control, and by the time we got turned around, started back, we were over the Alps Mountains, and so we couldn't bail out. And the pilot just had to try to nurse that aircraft over the Alps, through the Alps, until we could get past them, and then who knows. But by the time we got over the Alps, then we were at too low an altitude to bail out. So we saw a little riverbed down there, and the pilot said, well, we're going to try to bring it in there. So we tried to of course, in the meantime, we'd thrown everything out of the plane that we could. We'd thrown over guns and ammunitions, and of course our bombs were gone to try to lighten the plane as much as we could. And then he brought the plane in with a wheels-up landing on this little riverbed. Of course, what we didn't know at that time, that was where we went down was in the Brenner Pass area of northern Italy. And this little mountainous pass, what we didn't know at the time, because when we landed, one side of this was opening up with us on, sounded like 50 caliber machine guns, and the other, the Germans were potting away at us with 20 millimeter cannon. And what we found out later was that Tito's Yugoslav partisans had this one hill, and the Germans had the other hill, and we kind of went down. And I don't know why the Yugoslav partisans were shooting at us, but they did. And so we got out of the plane, and then the Germans sent a patrol down and captured us, and that's where I was captured. Our crew was.
To back up just a little bit while you're still in the air, what hit you to knock out the 2 planes?
Well, the anti-aircraft.
Anti-aircraft.
Yes.
Did the plane, when that hit, What did it feel like in the plane?
Oh, the plane was shaking all over the place because you could the flak was hitting it. We got hit all over on that. There was flak that went through the body of the plane. Everybody was just very fortunate that that nobody got hit.
What did you do?
Hmm?
What did you do?
Well, I got out of the ball turret and and put my parachute on and sat down and braced myself for the worst of it.
Was the 10 men on the plane, was there panic?
No, I don't think so.
You had trained for emergencies like this.
Oh yeah,
Not this serious, but
No, there wasn't.
was there anything else went through your mind?
Well,
As you were coming down?
I'm just like every other person on this world. We all wanted to live.
Yeah.
There's no question that I was sitting there saying a lot of prayers. But of course, everybody wants to live as long as they can. So that's what was going through everybody's mind, I'm sure.
Did all of the crew handle themselves in this real tragedy pretty well?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, when you hit the ground, tell us about that.
Well, we had to come in on a belly up landing, but it was a fairly wide area there from this little mountain stream back to the seemed to be like a very high grass on the one side, and the pilot had room to get that plane in there. Of course, like I say, our pilot was an excellent pilot. He done a marvelous job, and got the plane in there, and it crashed. Of course, that it didn't crash, but it crash landed. Came in with wheels up and on its belly, and of course you could hear the plane. You were sitting there and it was really shaking, and the things were breaking loose and everything like that. And you didn't know whether the plane, is it ever going to stop? But it finally did. And we didn't have any fire.
I was going to ask you about that.
No, we didn't have any fire. But then the real scary part was that the Germans were popping away at us with those 20 millimeters, and we could hear and it's, to me, 50 caliber has a very distinctive sound. So the Yugoslav partisans had American-built 50 caliber machine guns. Probably where they got them, we probably OSS probably gave it to them. But they were shooting at it with those. But they quit a little bit, I guess. And then the Germans quit, and then they came down and captured.
Did they come in the plane and get you?
No, we were all out of the plane.
You were all out.
Oh yeah, we got out of the plane as quick as we could, because we didn't know whether it would explode or catch fire.
What did they do when they got up to you? What did they do when the first approach they made to you? What did they do?
Well, you just put your hands up. I think the first thing they did, the soldiers did, they took my watch. I remember that I had for when I got out of high school in January, my father and mother had gotten me a Lord Elgin wristwatch, and that was the first thing they did. Took my wristwatch.
Then what else happened?
Well, then they took us up to they were in a kind of a little Italian village, where they had their gun. They didn't have any big guns up there. Like I say, they had 20 millimeter, which is a very small rapid fire cannon, and that's all I could see that they had up there. And then they were popping away at the Yugoslav partisans over on this other hill, and so I remember that one of the German officers told us how lucky we were. He says, and he looked at it. He says, "For you, the war is over."
I take it he could speak English.
Yes, he could speak English, and he said, "That's what I remember that very clearly." He says, "He said you're lucky." He says, "For you, the war is over," which means he regretted having to go on fighting the war.
Right. Did they abuse you in any way there?
No.
None whatsoever.
No.
Okay, then from the plane, and you're captured,
Yes.
did they tie your hands behind you or anything, or blindfold you or anything like that?
No.
Then where did you go?
Well, we were there not very long, maybe 3 or 4 days, 5 days. Then they put us on a train and sent us to Frankfurt, Germany. Frankfurt on the Main, Germany. And that's where we went under, that's where we were interrogated. And that's where it was decided what to do with us and all that.
Tell us about the interrogation.
Well, the interrogation was done by German officers. One of them, and I forget which university, but one of them was a graduate of one of the universities in the United States, spoke English as well as anyone. In fact, he had an American accent. So I don't know how long he lived in the United States, but probably quite some time. And the interrogation consisted of them trying to get as much information as they could. They wanted to know what the mission was, and they wanted to know how many aircraft was at our base, what kind. They wanted to know what kind of missions we went on, what kind of bombs we carried, and things like that.
Did they abuse you?
No, I myself was not. I guess the pilot was, I heard later, was abused, and the tail gunner was abused. I myself was not. They said I gave my name, rank, and serial number, and that's all I told them. And then they threatened me, and they said that they were going to put me in solitary confinement, and the next person to interrogate would not be a Luftwaffe officer, but would be a member of the Gestapo. But they couldn't carry out those threats because they had too many prisoners there, and there wasn't any place to put anybody in solitary. What they call solitary confinement was I was thrown in a room with about 12 other people, so I was never in solitary confinement. Now, I imagine that they abused the pilot a little bit because the pilot, of course, would have considerably more information than any other of the crew members. And he probably refused to tell them. I'm sure he did. But the thing about it is, that's the last time I saw him, my pilot. So the last time I saw I was trying to think if any other left Frankfurt with me, any of the other crew, and I don't think they did.
You say you didn't see the pilot.
I never saw that after we got to Frankfurt on the Main. I saw.
Have you seen him since?
No, I have not.
You're not sure he made it through that then?
Oh yes, because my mother received a letter from my mother, and his wife corresponded during the war, and my mother received a letter from his wife saying that he got home safe and sound.
Did, at the time you were captured and through this, how did they let the folks at home know that about what had happened?
Well, my mother was notified by the Air Force that I was missing in action.
Did you get a chance to write home or any letters or anything at the beginning?
No.
No writing?
No.
In other words, they didn't know really for sure whether you were alive then?
No, they just received a telegram stating that I was missing in action.
Okay. What about food? From the time you were captured and you're in Frankfurt now, did you get anything to eat?
Well, we ate there where I was captured in northern Italy. Of course, we ate field rations just the same as the German soldiers, so we ate very well there. In Frankfurt, had very little.
any German doctors around that you got bad sick or anything?
Well, I presume so, but I wasn't, and none of the people that I was in this room with got ill, so I presume there would have been, but I never saw them.
Okay, you're at Frankfurt, and how long did they keep you as a prisoner in Frankfurt?
Well, you know, Frankfurt, let me tell you a little bit, because that was a very experience that I'll always remember, is when we got to Frankfurt, and when we were going to when we left to go to the marshalling place to get on the train where we was going to move, we walked with German guards clear through the city of Frankfurt, and that was it's unbelievable to see what our bombs and the British were bombing in the night and we were bombing in the daytime, and Frankfurt was one of those experiences where I don't remember seeing any building in Frankfurt that had a roof left. There were fires burning in Frankfurt. There were German civilians out on the street in rags, and when they saw us, they wanted to tear us to pieces, and the German guards kept them off of us. But marching, if you ever saw a city at war and devastated, that's a terrible sight to see. But Frankfurt at that time was a destroyed city, and like I say, I saw no building intact walking clear through that city. It was something I'll always remember.
Yeah, I was going to say you'll never forget that.
No.
Did any bombers come in to bomb
Oh
while
yes,
you were there?
oh yes, that was the worst experience of the war. I think was in
Friendly fire.
Yes, because we were locked up in boxcars, maybe 40 of us in a boxcar, and and they're in the marshalling yards of Frankfurt before we left to go to and the British bombed it that night, and I swear to God those boxcars were jumping up off those rails 2 or 3, 4 inches, and then coming back from the concussions of the bombs, and you thought you were going to get killed at any moment, and that's when I saw people, some people panic. Was in that boxcar locked up with the bomb falling all around. I have to say that was the worst experience of the war. Was being locked up in that boxcar and being bombed by it was bombing at night, so it was the British Air Force, because they bombed at night. American bombed in the day. But that was.
How long were you in that boxcar?
It seemed like not too long, 3 or 4, 5 days, and then we moved out.
In other words, you had no toilet facilities, no food, no water, no nothing.
We had, the Germans would come around and we would get some water. I don't remember having any food. No, we didn't have any toilet facilities. It was not very nice.
That would make it bad. Okay. They finally come then, a guard come and let you out of the boxcar?
No, I don't remember being let out of the boxcar there in Frankfurt. No, they come around and they would hand us buckets of water. No, we weren't let out of the boxcar there.
You stayed right in there, and then the train pulled you out?
Yes. Well, from there, I was sent to my permanent prisoner of war camp, which was Stalag Luft IV, which is up at Stettin, Poland, just south of the Baltic Sea. At that time, Germany had control of it. Then Russia had control of it. I guess Poland headed back now. But that's where we went. A long train ride because there's many delays because of air raids and so forth. But we finally got to Stettin, and from there we walked to our prison camp.
And that was in Poland?
Yes, Stettin.
Stettin. How do you spell it? Do you remember? I don't know. felt that either.
Well, it wasn't there. The prison camp was maybe, what, 20 miles from there, or something like it. You know, it wasn't right there in the city. It was out there in the field all by itself.
What were conditions like in
In the prison camp? There was, trying to think of how many different loggers there was. I think there was A, B, C, and I think there was 4 loggers of American and British prisoners. And then on the outside of our prison, on the prison camp right to the east of us was butted right up next to our prison camp was a prison camp of Russian soldiers. We had our camp organized. By the way, it was an unusual camp in the fact Stalag Luft IV at that time was a camp of non-commissioned officers. In fact, I think there was around 9,000 or 10,000 American and British prisoners of war there, a lot. And basically, they were all sergeants.
Were you a sergeant?
Yes, I was a sergeant. But except there was 1 or 2, I think there was 1 American doctor there who was shot down on a mission. And I don't know why he was on a mission. Probably flew out. I think he flew out of England to see what one would be like. But it was very nice to have an American doctor there. But he was, as far as I know, he was the only officer in the camp. And of course, we had it organized. But the camp was in existence when I got there, and so the people who run each logger was firmly in place. I mean, American. Of course, the Germans ran it, but you had Americans that reported to the Germans, and so it was set up on a command basis. You have to have an organization like that. And now, in the barracks itself, in the room that I was in, there was probably around 20 to 24 American prisoners in this one room. Although when I first went in there, I was put in with British prisoners of war, and for about the first 3 or 4 weeks I was in prison camp, I was in with the British. And that was very enjoyable because when I was in high school, my father and mother played bridge, but back in those days they played what you call auction bridge, but they taught me to play bridge. But when I was with the British there, they all played bridge, and they taught me contract bridge, so that was very enjoyable.
Gave you something to do, Jack.
So I learned how to play bridge from contract bridge from the British prisoners of war.
Where'd you get a deck of cards?
Oh, they came in from the Swedish Red Cross. If we got outside supplies in there, and we did, because we had, they came through the Swedish Red Cross.
Did you have any way to get information?
I take that back. I'm sorry. I said the Swedish Red Cross. It was not the Swedish Red Cross. It was the Swedish Salvation Army. In fact, I don't remember the Red Cross coming in to our camp, but it was the Swedish Salvation Army that came into our camp, and they inspected it a couple of times. And also, if we got Red Cross, if we got food packages, it came through the Swedish Salvation Army.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. How long were you at this prison camp?
I was at the prison camp, must have been 7 months. I was there, let's see, I got shot down. I'm trying to think, was it September? Oh, I wouldn't have been there that long. I got shot down in either August or September
Of 44.
of 44. And I was in prison camp until we marched out of it, and that would have been in February. So I was in prison camp basically, and well, not counting the time it took me to get there, but from the time I was shot down, and I must have been shot down in August, and until I left there in, I think it was February of 45.
Did you have anything decent to eat in that prison?
Well, from the Germans, we had what they call field potatoes and bread. The bread was very interesting. The bread was synthetic bread, primarily. Made from, a lot of it made from wood fiber. The bread had been with Rommel in the German campaign in North Africa. It was very interesting. Of course, you were very hungry, and it tasted delicious. I mean, I don't know whether I could eat any today or not, but at that time, and I'm sure it was very nutritious. Now we got 1/7 of a loaf of bread a day. A loaf of bread was split up between 7 prisoners. And I think we got like 1 or 2 potatoes, maybe. I don't know, because the potatoes all were all put in one grouping, and we had our own. We had a little stove there, and so we cooked all the potatoes and shared that with that. Then the only other food that we got, that's all the German. Oh, we did get dehydrated sauerkraut, which I could not eat, and nobody else I know of could eat. And if you did eat it, you would have been spending all of your time in the latrine. But it was bad, tasting stuff.
Did they have some restroom facilities of some type?
Well, they had latrine.
Just a latrine. Showers?
No. Then, well, yeah, I guess. Did I get to take a shower there? I don't remember ever getting to take a shower there in prison camp. So they must not have had. I remember, you kind of try to clean yourself off the best you could. You get some water, and you kind of try to sponge yourself off if you could. But I don't remember. I don't think I was ever able to take a shower there. No.
How about lice?
Lice, a lot of lice. Everybody had lice. So then, as I was going to say on the food, the only other food that we got was we would get those Red Cross food packages would come into us, and they would be divided up. One package would be divided up amongst several prisoners. But I remember the Red Cross food package consisted of a can of corned beef. That went in with the potatoes. The corned beef and the potatoes were cooked together, and it made a real nice tasting dish. We got a can of that. We had vitamin C tablets in it. We had there was 2 packs of cigarettes in it. We had cubed sugar in it. And what they call the Army D-bar, chocolate. There was a D-bar in it. Yeah, I can't remember what else was in it. Of course, in prison camp, your monetary exchange value was cigarettes. Everything was bought and sold with cigarettes. There wasn't any money. And so cigarettes was the most valuable commodity in prison camp. I did smoke until I became a prisoner. At that time, I felt that I had to give it up, and I did, because cigarettes were too valuable to smoke, and so I quit smoking. And then I fortunately won quite a few cigarettes and gained a chance in prison camp. And so when I did march out of prison camp, I think the amount of cigarettes that I had on me, carried with me, is what saved my life. As I say, the cigarettes was by far the most valuable commodity a prisoner could have.
Okay. What, did you have any way to know what was going on in the rest of the world? Did you have anybody that was giving you little information on the progress of the war?
Well, you see, what you would get, there would always be new prisoners coming in. So, you know, after you'd been there for a while, you know, there would be once in a while there would be a new American prisoner. You would probably, basically, you'd get most of your news from that. And then, of course, the Germans would tell you. I mean, you know, we talked to the German guards. We conversed with them, and you know, maybe the officers might give you disinformation. But the guards who hated their jobs, probably were, you know, most of them were older men or men who had been wounded on the front, but most of the German guards were older men, and they wanted the war to be over just like we wanted it to be over. So, no, we talked to them.
Did you find quite a variance among how strict or mean certain guards were compared to other guards?
Oh, sure.
Did you have some that were really bad?
Yes, some of them, but fortunately they were in the minority. Most of the guards, you could trade. We traded with the guard. You could, you know, you could trade. They love American cigarettes, and you know, we could trade with the guards, and you know, they were trying to get along just like we were trying to get along. So most of the guards were all right. There were a few mean ones, just like you have in any society.
Is there anything else to tell us about this prison camp that you were in?
Well, it was very interesting. We had our own orchestra there. Played the big band music. It was a terrific group. And I remember at Christmas, the Germans let us have a big all the prisoners could be there, and they played. See, most of them in this band were former members of big band orchestras, and
is there any name ones that I would know? The people would know.
I think. Well, there was, but I can't recall their names now.
Where did you get the instruments?
Through the Swedish Salvation Army.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's something that
Yes.
I'm kind of surprised at.
Well, it's I've always had a warm spot for the Salvation Army ever since that. That's one of the things that all my life that you know, that I've donated to has been the Salvation Army because of the Swedish Salvation Army.
Yeah, that's really great. What then? When did you leave this prison camp?
Well, that's when when the Russians started their big winter offensive. They had our camp encircled on three sides, and this, like I say, was probably around the 1st of February or the last of January, around in that area. And we had to walk out of there, or the Russians would have overrun the camp. And then that's when that was the toughest part of being a prisoner, because from that time until I was finally liberated by advanced scouting elements of the British Second Army, I was on the road we were on the road walking. So we left on foot the prison camp, and we walked across the rest of Poland, walked clear across Germany, crossed the Elbe River, recrossed the Elbe River, and was finally liberated. In other words, we were on the road 3 months. I think some of us figured out probably at least 800 miles.
Were there a large group of you?
We were in separate groups. There would be, I don't know how many in a group, maybe start out maybe 500, 400 or 500 in one group. It kept dwindling down.
You mean the people were dying?
Oh, yes, a lot of prisoners. That's where a lot of prisoners died, was known as forced march. Like I say, that's when you never got any food, and on this forced march. See, when I was shot down, I weighed 175 pounds. When I marched out of that prison camp, I probably had lost only 5 pounds. I probably weighed 170. But when I was liberated by the British Second Army, and they weighed me, I weighed 119 pounds.
Oh.
So I lost all that weight in those 3 months on the road. But at that, I was very fortunate. Now there was 3 other fellows that were very close to me, and we hung together, the 4 of us, and we shared whatever food we got. As I say, I had, I don't know, I think I had over 20 packs of cigarettes, which when I went out of that prison camp, which made me very, very wealthy. Well, I would trade those cigarettes to German civilians for bread, or whatever else they had to eat, and that's what you had to eat. But see, what the prisoners died of mostly on this forced march was dysentery, because you were dying of thirst all the time, and you weren't getting any water, and it was in the wintertime, it was snow, and you grab up hands of snow and eat it to get some moisture, and so everybody had dysentery. I had it very bad, and I remember one time when we sat down to rest, I was unable to get up. If you were unable to get up and walk, then one of the German guards would come back, and he had no choice. He would take the butt end of his rifle and hit you right here, and of course that would kill you. And so I remember one time I couldn't get up. And so 2 of my friends, the 4 of us were traveling, they got a hold of each of my arm and they started me walking. Well, once you start walking, then it's all right. Once I got my legs to going again. But that was the worst part. Well, as I say, I had dysentery very bad. But fortunately, then I ended up with a group of, there was only about, like I say, it kept getting smaller and smaller, and groups kept getting separated. And there was probably only maybe 40 of us. But we had the American doctor with us, the 40 of us. And we all had dysentery very bad. So he said he had to get it bound up. So when we stopped at this one place at night, and that was, remember, it was a German barn. We was most of the time we would just sleep out. And what you do is you go up there and you go and gather branches and stuff to try to get a little height up off the snow on the ground, and you climb up on the branches, and that's where you sleep at night. But this place we pulled in, it must have been a German farm right outside of a German town, because Germans, like most Europeans, they don't have farms like we do. That what most of them do is they farm, but they all live in a small central town, and then they go out in like a spoke shape to their farms. And they don't have individual farms as such. But anyway, so what he did was he said, we've got to get you all bound up. So what he did was we burned wood, they got it down to the charcoal, and then you force yourself to eat it, burnt wood, charcoal. But that stopped the dysentery. That got you bound up, and if it wasn't for that, why, the dysentery would just kill you. And that's what killed most of the American prisoners, was dysentery.
I see. And how long were you on this forced march?
Until I was liberated, and I was liberated in May.
1945.
Yes.
And tell us about what happened when you were liberated.
Well, I was dwindled down to when I was liberated. I think there was only 6 of us together at that time. There was 6 of us traveling at that time, and we were at this and there was seemed like there was about 6 prisoners and 2 German guards, and we were at this one house, and here comes the jeeps or jeep-like vehicles of the British scout unit, and they came up and liberated us. And then I remember they got a radio message that there were 6 German Tiger tanks headed our way, and of course they were getting ready to take off. But then the German tanks, amazing, they threw up the white flag and they surrendered to this little scouting unit of the British. And so I was liberated at that time by the British Second Army. Well, they took me to a camp and deloused me, and that's where I got a shower and they put delousing powder all over me and get rid of the body lice and everything, and they fed me my first meal. Well, my stomach had shrunk so much that I threw everything up that I ate because my stomach couldn't hold it. But the British had no control over me since I was American. So they told me where the American front lines were in France, a long ways from there, and so I and one of my friends was still with me. We took a German motorcycle, and we got on it, and we headed for France, and the American Army, and then we stayed at night at a couple of German civilian homes. Of course, at that time, the time I got liberated, it was about the same time that Germany was surrendering, and it was all. Didn't they surrender on May the 2nd or May the 10th, something like that?
I think so.
Well, I was liberated right before the surrender, but pretty soon after the surrender, why the Germans surrendered, and I remember staying at a couple of German civilian homes, and of course all of them at that time, told me how they were all against the war and how they all hated Hitler and all that. But we finally made it into France. I can't remember what town it was, and we ran into American control. But at that time, of course, I hadn't shaved. I had a beard way down to here, and like I say, I weighed next to nothing. And rouge crime, I still had GI clothes, but they were all in rags, and I remember I had the top out of my wool cap, and I remember this one MP officer saw the 2 of us, and he said, "Get those guys, get the American uniforms off those gooks." But
Jack, I believe at this time we'll take a short pause.
all right.
You're doing great. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's one of the best we had.
I think the battery's gonna go down for you.
Well, I was going to call for one here pretty soon.
You mentioned frostbite before.
Okay, we're back here now with Jack Hubbard, prisoner of war and on a B-24 in World War II. Jack, one thing in our short break that we took here to get a drink of water, were there any attempts at escape from any of the prisons that you...
Well, in Stalag Luft IV, there were 2 or 3 attempts, but they were all unsuccessful.
What happened to those people?
Well, they were either killed or they were put in solitary confinement for a long period of time. So they were their policy was that time, you know, if you tried to escape and they captured you, they shot you.
Well, I think they felt if you tried to escape something about the Geneva Convention, they felt more like they could, I believe. I don't agree with that, but
I remember one time, now whether it was actually true or not, I can't say, but there was a very strong rumor in camp that Adolf Hitler at one time ordered all the Allied prisoners to be executed. And so I remember that was on everybody's mind for 2 or 3 days. But the German officers, the top level German officers refused to carry out the order.
you mentioned that most of you in the prison camp were sergeants. I presume they took the officers to a different prison camp?
Yes. Now, my brother was a prisoner of war. He was a bombardier on a B-17 bomber flying out of England. And in fact, Bill was shot down at least a year before I was. He was in Stalag Luft IV. That was a prisoner of war camp in Germany for officers.
Did they treat them different?
Oh, I don't think so. I doubt it. I don't know. I wasn't in any of those prison camps, but I doubt it very much.
Did you have anyone on the forced march across Germany that tried to escape, just take off across the field, or?
Oh, I think everybody at that time, after we'd been on the march for a week or so, where would you have gone? Number two, how far could you run? Because everybody at that time was fairly weak. You know, I don't think that you would have had the physical strength to do it, and there wouldn't have been any place to go.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Okay, you're being liberated.
Yes. And I make it into France. And so what they do when they decide to send me to a camp, what they sent me to, the first camp they sent me to was for displaced persons. And so I finally got across to them that I was an American prisoner of war. And then they sent me to a hospital, a field hospital, American field hospital. And I was there, maybe a week or 2 weeks, but I still had that big long beard, and so I was going to get home with that, and so because I hadn't shaved all the time I was a prisoner. But one of the nurses, when I was asleep one night, she snuck in there and took a pair of scissors and clipped off half of it, so I'd have to shave. But it's quite an interesting experience there, you know. And of course, my parents had gotten a telegram that I had become a prisoner of war. But I had written several letters from prison camp, and they had received none of them. So the Germans hadn't sent any of them on. So they had never heard from me since I got shut down. It was quite interesting, but right at that time in France, there was Mother's Day coming on. I think it must have been around May the 10th or something. Is that Mother's Day? Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, so I got to in this town, French town. I was in the hospital. I asked if there was a Red Cross place where I could send telegrams, and she said yes. And so I went to this in this French town to a Red Cross office. I didn't have any money, and I kind of explained the situation. So they allowed me to send 10 words, and I sent it to my mother. I said, "Happy Mother's Day. I'm fine. Hope to be home soon." And that was the first word. That got there before they notified her I'd been liberated or anything. So I remember she said that was quite something.
That would be. Did you, you mentioned earlier in our discussion about your feet being frozen.
Well, that was one of those things. They wanted to practice. This was not on a mission. This was on. They wanted the bombardier wanted to practice some bombing runs with practice 100-pound bombs in Italy, and so he wanted me to go up, or I volunteered to go up and film it with a film leaning through the bomb and film it. And he said, well, so I just had my suntans on at that time, and he said, well, we're not going to go very high. So I didn't think the temperature would be, if he didn't go any higher than he said he was going to, I wouldn't need to put on the heavy fur-lined boots and all that stuff. So I just went up in my suntans, and naturally, instead of going about 10,000 feet, they went up to about 20,000 feet, and I got my toes frostbitten. And we had a few words when we got back in the ground.
I'll bet you did. All right. Now, the war is about to end. You've been liberated. Take us from there now, how you got home. And
Well, from France, they sent me to a hospital in England outside of, at Warminster, which is outside of Bristol, England. That really what caused a lot of my later medical problems, because I lost so much weight, and so they didn't want to send me home looking skinny. I don't know why. And so they decided to pack me up. And so there in England, they were feeding me, besides my 3 meals a day, I was having to drink about 6 eggnogs a day. And I figured out later they were feeding me about 2 dozen eggs a day. And they did put a tremendous amount of weight on me in a very short period of time, but that caused a lot of heart problems to me, clogged up my arteries, and I know that's what did it. And of course, I'm not blaming them, because they didn't know that I don't think medical science at that time knew that all that real fast fat intake was that bad for your arteries and everything. But I was at Warminster, and I was an ambulatory patient. It was I enjoyed that there. It was the countryside around there was absolutely beautiful, and I got to take some bicycle rides around there, and then I got to take 2 trips down to Southampton from there. I was in charge of taking Repo-Depo, that place, people who had been in the hospital there, and they were sent them to replacement areas, and that was so I got to take 2 trips down south. And that was very enjoyable. I got some free leave time in town, and so that was so I enjoyed that there, and I don't. After they got me, put the weight on me, then I got sent home. I went to Southampton then, and I was on a ship, and I landed in Norfolk, and I was in the hospital there in Norfolk, and then from there they sent me to Fort Harrison, and I was in the hospital there at Fort Harrison, and then I got leave there and got to come home. And then after my leave was up, they sent me down to San Antonio, Texas, and that's where I was discharged.
I see. And when would that have been?
That would have been, let's see, I got home, that would have been in the fall, or pretty close to in the fall or early winter of 45.
45, 46, right along in there.
Well, 45. It would have been it would have been late 45.
I see. And then you came home from, you were discharged at San Antonio?
At Texas, yes, San Antonio.
And then you came back to Crawfordsville?
Yes.
Okay, now, somewhere along the line, did you get married?
Oh, not later, yeah. I think after I've been home a couple of years.
What job did you go to when you got home?
First job I had was, I was in sales training at Keeper Stewart, a wholesale company in Indianapolis was the first job I had when I got home. And I was there quite a while, but then my father and my brother and I, we had an opportunity to buy a dry cleaners in Crawfordsville, so we bought that dry cleaners.
Did you run it for quite some time?
Yes, quite some time, and then my father and I sold it out to my brother, and
What year would that have been?
what year that was?
Did you work at anything else other than the dry cleaning then?
Well, after I did that, I went over to Indianapolis, and I got a job with Indiana Bell Telephone Company selling yellow page advertising. And I was with them for quite a number of years. And, but then, you know, I got tired of all the traveling. And that was a job where working in Indianapolis was fine. That was 6 months, but the other 6 months you were traveling, working the other towns. And that's fine when you're young, but it gets old after a while.
Are you retired now?
Yes, I am retired now. I went from there, I went to Arrow Drapery Company. I sold custom-made draperies and things like that in Indianapolis for about 16 years. And I retired from there.
I see. And then a couple of years after you got out of the service, you got married?
Yes, I got married.
Who did you marry?
Eve Anderson. Her father was a farmer in Montgomery County. And still married. It's been a long time.
Children?
We had one son.
What's his name?
His name is, first name is Robert, his middle name is Jeffrey. And he has 2 children. We have 2 grandchildren.
They grandsons or
One grandson and one granddaughter. My grandson lives in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And my grandson lives there with him. My granddaughter is married and lives in Indianapolis.
What's her married name now?
Vaught. David Vaught. Not one of the Vaught's around Crawfordsville. I know there's a lot of Vaught's around Crawfordsville, but no, it's but she lives in Indianapolis.
I see. Do you ever have a reunion of your old plane crew or some of the fellows that you marched across Germany?
Well, the only time I ever got together with any of them was, I do belong to, I do belong to the American Legion, and but I joined several years ago when they first formed an ex-POW organization. And when they had their national convention in Las Vegas, I went to there, and the engineer on my crew, Bruno Chimay, an Italian from New York, was living there. He had stayed in the service. It's interesting. He had stayed in the service and retired from the service. Of course, he was, you know, the crew chief when I heard. And then after he retired from the service, he went to work for the Federal Aviation, FAA, you know, as an inspector on the passenger planes. And then he retired from there. So, and then he was living in Las Vegas. So I had a great time with he and his wife, and reliving old experiences and see which one could tell the biggest lie and all that stuff, you know. And I went to the meeting that night with members of Stalag Luft IV. We had a dinner in Las Vegas, and there was quite a few members there. You know, after so many years have gone by, gee, 40 years, you don't recognize them anymore. You know, when you knew them, they were young. Now we're all old. So, but it was very enjoyable.
Well, that's great. Well, Jack, this has been a very interesting interview that we've had to do in a very trying period of your life during World War II. And on behalf of America and the people in future generations, I want to thank you for the contribution that you made. And thank you so much for
Well,
sharing it.
thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great.
That was great, Jack.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's
That was wonderful.
fantastic.
Yeah.